talking about family cycling, our next speaker is Layla. She loves bikes, loves cycling around Manchester with her family, and she's the founder of Kiddical Mass Manchester. So, welcome, Layla. Are you just in the volume? So thanks for the introduction and thanks for the invite this evening. I've got to say I've given so many talks at work to big auditoriums, and this feels way more scary because I feel like I'm amongst like cycling glitterati, which I absolutely do not count myself as part of. Yeah, I'm Layla and I live in Manchester. I'm a mum to 2 kids. I work as a pharmacist and been quite involved in school streets, kind of set up at my children's school, but I've also worked at Traffic Council as a pharmacist, but doing some research around school streets. And as you said, founded Kiddical Mass Manchester with some other people, lovely people in this room. So this is me and my trusty Steve, my lovely Gazelle, lovely Dutch upright bike that takes me far and wide across Manchester. When I was invited to come along, I thought, what is my story? I'm not even sure what my story is. So I hope I give you some kind of constructive story this evening that gives you a bit of an idea about what bikes mean to me. And I started by searching my photos on Google Photos, and I searched bike. And I realised that bikes actually are integral to pretty much everything that I do nowadays, which is bonkers considering that 10 years ago I didn't cycle. So I was definitely someone who drove a car most places. But these are just like a tiny fraction of some of the photos that represent where bikes have become a big part of my life, or where I've been inspired by biking to do certain things. So do it really quickly through these photos. The top left-hand corner is Brookburn Road in Chorlton. My children go to Brookburn Primary, and I, amongst a couple of other parents, have led in getting that school street set up from around 2020, so pre-COVID. We were applying to Manchester City Council to close the road outside the school, and the school's become one of 5 Manchester TFGM school street trials. So that's that. That's me on a mountain bike. So that's probably really where I used to spend most of my time on a bike. My husband and I, prior to having kids, would head out into the hills and mountain bike. That's probably where I felt safest on a bike, which is a bit mad, but I just always felt way too scared to cycle on the roads until recently. There's Pauline, Sarah and Liz from Mums for Lungs and I at a Kiddical Mass event, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Bike shelter at the school. It's not very exciting to you maybe, but to me it is, because I was very much involved in the school, like getting that bike shelter. So applying for a grant through TFGM to get that in place, and it was a mission, but it's there and it's now full of bikes every day, so it's so satisfying. Me bringing pumpkins home for Halloween on my bike, that's us in France, moving along the bottom on holiday. So I realised looking back at photos that biking is pretty much an integral part to all the holidays that we go on now in the UK, and that's in France. This here, me with my bike, is me on the first day of a population health fellowship that I did at Traffic Council. So I mentioned that I've done some school streets research, and that was an NHS England population health fellowship where I worked at the council 2 days a week and did some research on the kind of barriers and opportunities to implement school streets in Trafford. But absolutely came from the fact that I cycle and that I love it and that I get so much joy from it, and that I really feel a passion to spread that. And then another picture of Kiddical Mass on the bottom. So yeah, there's also actually a photo missing on here. Another thing that I've done in the recent past that has definitely influenced me and where I'm at in my community is working as a rider and also for a short period of time as a director for Chorlton bike deliveries. And it was that led us to get the park cargo bike that we've got. So much that's interlinked, but there isn't a photo on there, so I apologise for that. So when I looked at all these photos and I went a bit down memory lane, it's probably the reason that I was really late in getting the presentation to you. Because I was just sat looking at loads of photos going, oh my God, like how have bikes become such a big part of me? But I've realised that the bike really and cycling has become the hub to so many of the spokes of my life. It kind of makes my hair stand on end. And so, you know, I've described how professionally that's happened. It's also just kind of linking into the fact that I'm a pharmacist, but I work within general practice. And I'm a prescriber and I'm clinically trained, and I spend quite a lot of my time running clinics for children with asthma. And air quality and the toxic air we've got in Manchester has become a big area of interest for me. And I think it's obvious how kind of school streets and cycling kind of come into that. So community's a massive thing. So you know, for me, it's definitely brought me community that I didn't have before. I'm going to talk very much in a minute about how it's become fundamental to how me and my husband parent our kids, and also the other parents that we are now friends with. Climate action speaks for itself, but you know, any climate action that I feel I've been able to really make a contribution to has been related to cycling and school streets. It's definitely a big part of my well-being and how I maintain my well-being, and also just massively affects my worldview. Being out cycling affects my worldview. Being amongst people who cycle and really benefit from it and enjoy it affects my worldview. So there we go. But I have come to cycling and being a utility cyclist, and I actually definitely don't call myself a cyclist. But you know, I've come to using bikes as one of the most useful tools in my life through my kids, and this is them. So this is Noah and Ruby a few years ago, and my husband's always been a keen cyclist, a commuter cyclist. We lived in London for 6 years, and he used to cycle about, and I was just way too petrified, but didn't need to cycle in London because of public transport. Moved back up to Manchester when Noah was 2, and he has just always loved being on a bike. So he could ride a balance bike from being 1 year old. It's probably the proudest moment that my husband had when he got on a little balance bike. He just went, yeah, I can do this. But I ended up with peer pressure from my own family to just get on a bike because. So here's Noah on, I think that's like his 3rd balance bike, so that's him when he's a bit older. There's Ruby on in our bike trailer. We brought them up with the bike very much part of their life, and that meant that it ended up having to become part of my life, because whenever I suggested getting in the car, the kids would be like, oh, can't we go on the bike? Please, can't we go on the bike? I really felt like I was neglecting them by putting them in a car. So, yeah, well, I'm going to apologise now. There's way less child spam than I was tempted to. I was nearly just going to give you 20 minutes of photos of the kids on bikes because it's the cutest thing in the world. And I have had permission from them to share these photos, and that I feel it's quite important with kids. But bikes have just become a massive highlight. So there's Noah on his early BMX days. There he is. Looking happy. There's Ruby on a balance bike. There she is in the snow. So we definitely are not fair weather cyclists, but I'm not anymore because they're not, and that's just how it happens. And there she is taking her first cycling, without cycling for the first time on her own. And here they are. Again, this is still a couple of years ago. Noah's 11 this month and Ruby's 8, but that's our term that we were very much inspired to get after I rode one during my rides for Chorlton bike deliveries, and that really is our primary vehicle now. So we do have a car, but we don't feel the need to use it just because, we've got the turn and the kids love to ride about. so that's it. So all this, you know, this pressure on me to really embrace cycling has meant that I, through the children, have realised how bloody great it is. Like, it just is. It's probably the best thing to happen to me. And seeing how much joy and independence and flexibility and confidence that's given to the children. And having lived in London and seen that school streets existed, kind of, you know, I put my feelers out and started to really kind of think, oh, why is this not happening in Manchester? And it was that led me to be involved in school streets. The other thing that definitely enabled this was our Streets Chorlton, and Claire and Pauline are in the room this evening, was fundamental for me so our Streets Chorlton was a lottery funded kind of climate action piece of work that happened in Chorlton, and a big part of that was to implement school streets in Chorlton and look at the effect that has on the community. And I became involved in that, and the rest is history with school streets at Brookburn. Here's just some pictures of what the school street looks like. It runs rain, sunshine, whatever the weather. And I think hopefully all of you in the room would recognise just how amazing this is, children reclaiming their space outside of their school to arrive peacefully at school without the stress of traffic, noise, pollution. There's Noah on his bike. The kids just truly love it. So one thing the main thing that's come out of the school street for me as a parent, but also within my community, is it's provided the space for conversation and time to stop outside school and talk, which doesn't happen when you've got a busy road with traffic passing by. And that's led to a realisation that so many families want to do this. So many families want to travel around by bike with their kids, but they just don't feel like they can. And this kind of us and them feel between people, cyclists and people who drive cars, who drive cars, we're different, and we're absolutely not. And there's just been this step change at Brookburn. You can see it, where the bike shelters are always full. Parents who we got some animosity from and a bit of jib from, a lot of jib from, in the early days around, restricting their access to the school by car, now walking and cycling and are coming to chat and are happy and are smiling on the school run. And I think it was through school streets actually that through kind of being on Twitter and seeing chat about school streets and family cycling, I was made aware of a showing of the film Motherload, that massively inspired me. And I think if we show the video now, you'll probably, I think it's just a couple of minutes, but understand why that inspired me to really kind of be the change that I want for our community. And I really was inspired to kind of take a lead on that. So yeah, feel free. Oh no.
We can always we'll share it on our social channels afterwards. Is that okay? Okay.
That is fine. So I'll just quickly describe what that. Have I got time? Because I kind of waffle on. So Motherload is a film made by Liz Canning, who's a film producer out in California, and she talks about how cycling saved her as a young woman. She was anorexic, she really struggled, and cycling saved her at that time. It talks a little bit about the role of cycling in emancipation of women and the suffragette movement, and how when she had children she became really isolated, and it was kind of some of the worst years of her life because she was at home, she's surrounded by laundry, and when she I think Googled mums who cycle and found a picture of a cargo bike and couldn't believe her eyes. She was like, what even is that? And she talks, the film is about her story and relationship with cargo bike and her family and just basically how it freed her. And in that film, she talked about Kiddical Mass, and I was like, Kiddical Mass, what is that? I'd heard of critical mass. And that makes it sound way easier. So Kiddical Mass Manchester was born, it just happened. But I came away from that, went to the pub after the screening of the film with some other parents from the kids' school, and was like, we've got to make a Kiddical Mass happen. And yeah, and so we did. And it definitely wasn't that easy, and it was scary. But what Kiddical Mass is, it's an international movement to organise bike rides out on our city streets to enable families to ride out together and feel safe on the roads. And when I initially thought, I wonder if there's been a Kiddical Mass in Manchester. I googled Kiddical Mass Manchester and there had been some rides out. So Anna definitely led on some rides out in Manchester. Of course she had, because she's the front runner of all of this. But I think they've primarily been Anna, correct me if I'm not right, but have been involved in the Floop and in parks, rightfully so, because that's where we love cycling in our leisure time. But something that I'd been pushed to do was ride on the roads around Manchester with my family, and it's freaking scary. And so I felt really passionate that actually these Kiddical Mass rides, and just by the notion of what Kiddical Mass is, they are about freeing people to enjoy the city streets and reclaiming them for families to move about. And this is a video, hopefully this one plays, that we made during our last Kiddical Mass ride in May. I do want to take a moment here to just really recognise Pauline and Sarah. Where's Sarah? Oh, you're there. So Pauline and Sarah are two, and then there's Paul who's not here tonight, two people who without Kiddical Mass in Manchester definitely wouldn't have happened. So like I'm talking today and I mentioned I'm a fan of Kiddical Mass, but actually I had the idea, but in terms of making it happen, you two definitely keep watching. So I think just to sum up that video, kids love cycling, families want to cycle with their kids, but we don't really see it that often. And it's because it doesn't feel safe. But when we make it feel safe out on the roads by riding out together, they come and they cycle out. And both as a parent, as a citizen of Manchester, as a healthcare professional, with a real eye view on population health, all Manchester families, I believe, but hopefully we all believe that all Manchester families deserve this gift. And the gift of joy, the freedom, the flexibility, and the play involved in cycling about our city. It's safe. All families also deserve for safe, clean, cheap mobility, which is what this is, and the community that it brings. So even just being out on your bike and the interactions that gives, the opportunity that gives just on a daily basis, we all deserve that. And on the back of that, from a health perspective, all our children deserve to breathe clean air, and they don't in Manchester. We've got some of the most toxic air in Europe, and a significant proportion of that toxicity comes from the emissions from cars, from car exhaust. But the physical activity, and on the back of that, the health and well-being, and honestly, the smiles. So it's the smiles that cycling gives you when you cycle, and again, it makes my hair stand on end. But it's also the smiles that you receive So, you know, when anybody, I'm out and about with a cargo bike and the kids on the back, maybe not so much now that they're older, but people smile, and also the intrigue is there. It's a conversation starter. People want to know what it's all about. And every single family deserves that. So this is the mantra that I live by, both professionally and as a human being. But you know, enabling active travel for families, it really is a matter of social justice and climate justice, and both of those being interlinked. But children and young people and families absolutely need to be at the heart of decision making on citywide, region-wide, national active travel strategy, because only then will we actually mobilise our population, the active part of our mobilisation, to move around in this way. And Kiddical Mass absolutely demonstrates that if you build it in whatever way, they'll come.
Has anyone got any questions? Yeah, first up in the middle.
Thank you, Vincent, Rush Home resident, cycle instructor. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I've worked at Brooklyn and probably taught your children as a cycle trainer. My question is, the last phrase, build it and they will come. But it's been dismantled. Is anyone here from Withington, the low traffic neighbourhood, the St Paul's? Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
Yes. It's being the councillors have just gone cold on it, so that's very depressing. I mean, school streets. I live in our local school is Birch and Russia, and we've got a school street there. But it's so labour. Is it sustainable? It's just so labour intensive. I mean, I saw it. I've seen the pictures. My understanding is it's under review. You tell me what's happening to school streets, and there's things in the road that you don't use, the pop-up bollards.
I can probably answer some of those questions from my perspective, my view.
Yeah,
so, if I was in charge of what was going on in Withington, they would be being ripped out. But I'm not, and I'm sorry that I'm not, and yeah, I can't really comment on that, because I think that I've not had any involvement with it, but it's a sad state of affairs when something so positive happens, and you know, everybody in the community's got massive amounts to gain for it, and then it's reversed. With regards to school streets, is it sustainable with the current model? No. Is there a model that we have in other parts of the UK that is sustainable? Yes. So London now has, the last time I read the literature, over 350 school streets across multiple boroughs.
600, 500. Yeah.
500, Sarah knows. So, and growing. So, you know, it's become normal state of play there. It's, you know, if you've got a school without a school street, then you're the odd one out, rather than being unusual. So, and that's great. That has come from investment, and you know, in the infrastructure, and also leadership that has enabled that. But I am assured that it's coming in Manchester. It will happen. You know, we are just a little bit behind, maybe more than a little bit behind, but we are. But I think there's hope, and I think I know from working at Trafford Council and doing some research and linking in with TFGM on that, on the current school street model and the barriers that haven't had volunteers. So for those of you that don't know, when it's currently in London, the school streets have cameras, so ANPR, number recognition cameras, at either end of the school street, or in multiple places if it's multiple roads. And if a car that isn't allowed to drive through that school street, so if it's not a resident who shouldn't have access, then they'll get a warning and then a fine, just as you would if you were speeding. So they've got that facility in Manchester and in other parts of the country to enforce a school street. we have to put physical barriers in the road, and it needs at least generally 2 volunteers at each closure point. So you can imagine trying to man that with volunteers. It relies on parents generally. Teachers don't have the time, school staff don't have the time.
Women parents.
Women parents? I don't know actually. That's changed at Brookburn. It definitely was initially women, but we do have quite a few. Residents. Yeah, we don't really have residents. Our residents have been our our nightmare. But we do. So it's not sustainable because it requires a lot of people's time. The other thing that the current model does is drives big inequality, because where you've got middle class areas, where you've got parents who are invested because they massively understand and potentially even work in areas of health, they will invest their time, and then in other parts of the city that don't have that, their school streets don't happen. So ANPR is an absolute must, and hopefully will happen. But we've had to demonstrate through a trial, that we at least have got buy-in from residents and have consultations and prove that a school street in the essence can work before we can move on to that. What was the other question? Sorry. Don't ask me anything about school streets because I will bore you.
Yeah. You hit on, which was very deep, about the fact that Manchester is up there as regards to pollution. One of up there in Europe. Like, I know you've only got a really short period of time, but how bad that is, how does that affect us, especially the little ones? And yeah, and if you have time, and I understand if you don't, stick with that one.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
No, so just basically, so basically she mentioned that Manchester is up there, really up there as regards of pollution, especially for our children, up there in Europe. So just basically, how is that affecting our children, basically on a longer scale, what she's done from the research? And my other question was, if you were in charge, what would you do to change that, to stop us from being up there in Europe? You don't have to answer.
No, I can answer it. Someone put me in charge. So, the car exhaust fumes contain 2 main types of harmful substances. One is nitrogen dioxide, which we've known about for a long time, and the other, which is an emerging, worrying pollutant, is particulate. So particulates are really, 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 really tiny molecules that are emitted out into the atmosphere, and you can't see them and you can't smell them, but you definitely breathe them in. And they're so concerning because they're so tiny. They get into every part of our body. They even get into our brain. They even get into placentas of unborn babies. And we should all be mega shocked and horrified by that. And the reason we should is because those particulates are class 1 carcinogens. So carcinogens are cancer-causing molecules, and class 1 is of the most dangerous kind. And we know this. So if you go onto the World Health Organisation website and you scratch the surface about air pollution, it will tell you that. And we know that. Our kids are breathing them in en masse in Manchester every single day. When we're talking about cancer, I think it's linked to every potential cancer. The other thing that particulates are now known to cause are diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, so they get into the brain, they're known to cause dementia, cardiovascular disease. In fact, there isn't much that they haven't been linked with. So, taking that into account, and our kids are breathing them in every day, there's the potential for them to have a massive effect on them. The other, really, I suppose, significant, and the thing that I come across every day is the nitrogen dioxide and the fumes out the back of cars are known to cause and exacerbate respiratory disease, so things like asthma and then COPD in older people. And Ella Kisidebra, a child who died at the age of 9 in London from an asthma attack, was the first child, I think, in the world to have air pollution named as the primary cause of her death. She lived on the South Circular with her family, and it was known that she was having asthma attacks because she lived on the South Circular, and the emissions from cars and the pollution levels, they were measuring them, the pollution levels were let off the scale, and nothing was done about it, and she had a fatal asthma attack. We're basically in Manchester just waiting for the next Ella, which is just absolutely horrendous, which is what absolutely drives me to all of this stuff. So if I was in charge, the one record, like when I did my work at Trafford, the one thing that the thing that doesn't make sense to me that I think absolutely needs to happen across Greater Manchester is every single school across the region should have a particulate and nitrogen dioxide air pollution monitor on the school wall. They're readily available, they exist. They might be expensive, but in relative terms they are not expensive, and we're talking about child health. Because if we don't know what the air pollution levels are, how do we know where our hotspots are and where we need to take action? And in my view, that should be one of the leading key factors that drives where we put school streets, and currently it's not. Currently it's which are the schools that are most near to active travel infrastructure, that's kind of... So I think, we need to be taking, if I was in charge, we would absolutely be taking a population health approach to active travel interventions for children, and that's looking at, deprivation, looking at where's our highest proportion of road safety incidents, where our highest level of pollution, and that as a composite score should be where we should be making interventions as an absolute priority.